Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Ruby Rogues. I am John Epperson, and today we have a guest with us, Kinsey Durham Grace. Welcome, Kinsey.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. And on our panel, we have Valentino Stoll.
Hey now.
Awesome. Now, Kinsey, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself? Tell everybody why you're famous, all the things.
Definitely not famous. But yeah, a little bit about me. I'm based in Denver, Colorado, so do a lot of the outdoorsy things out here. I work for GitHub as an engineer on their deploys team. So that's super fun. Love doing that and working there and on the team and the work that I do. I have been writing a lot more in Ruby recently, which has been amazing. I feel like I took a little detour and was writing more in Go and different things like that, and now I feel like I'm back to Rails, Ruby land, and most of the work I do is in that, so that's been super exciting. um, yeah, and I have a 1-year-old son, which has been a new adventure for me as well. And I also I'm on the board for Bridge Foundry, which is, some people may have heard of RailsBridge or GoBridge, and it is a workshop that teaches marginalized genders how to write code. And that is actually the workshop that I did back in, oh man, that's, I can't remember the exact date, but I did, 9, 10 years ago. That really launched my, career in deciding to learn how to write code. So really cool to be kind of circling back with that organization, and just because it means a
Nice.
lot to me. Because otherwise I wouldn't be here. So really passionate about that one. And then also co-organizing the Ruby Central Scholar and Guides program, which is something that's also really important to me. And I've been doing that for a while. I know, Valentino, you've been a guide before, which is amazing. So yeah, thank you for that. And then I also lead GitHub's Women and Non-Binary Community of Belonging, or also known as Employee Resource Group, and called the Ada Cats. So I really enjoy doing that work too at GitHub specifically. So all over
That's
the
actually
place.
super cool. Yeah, you do a lot of things that I wasn't even expecting. Yeah, yeah.
Yes, and I also mentor students too, through a company called Thinkful. I have a couple students that I work with there, which is also really great work. So you can see the thread here, but a theme.
No, I think it's awesome. I personally, I have always had sort of like a mentoring bent, right? Like,
Oh,
just some
cool.
people like to do that kind of stuff, and that's always sort of
Hmm.
been my thing. And it's cool it's very cool to me to meet other people that like to do that stuff too and find it important and valuable and spend their time doing that. So, uh, kudos to you and thanks to you on
Well, it seems
behalf
like
of
all three of us
all
have that
those
in
other
common
people. Yeah.
because, yeah,
Yeah.
because Valentino has volunteered to be a guide too, which is,
Yeah,
mentoring and
totally.
that sort of thing.
That was so much fun too. And I mean, honestly, hats off to you. I can't imagine having to, help orchestrate all that and coordinate.
We have it
That is
down pretty good now, a good
okay.
routine. So yeah,
That
but
is
it's
definitely
great.
not my forte. But it's a lot of fun. I mean, if you've never participated in the guide or scholar program, I definitely recommend it. It's so much fun, and you get to meet a ton of new people. It's great access for sure.
Yeah, we really, this upcoming RubyConf in Houston. I know, there's some weirdness with it being in Houston and things like that, but we didn't have, we had to double up all of our scholars with one guide because we had so few guide applicants, which is way different than what we've
Mm,
experienced in the past years. So yeah, definitely,
Wow.
if you're interested and you're going, or you're going to a conference, a Ruby Central conference in the future, we would just love to have you as a guide. Yeah, so it was a little
that's in
sad for us this year.
I mean, that's in like a month.
Right, yes, very
So
short notice for this
yeah,
one,
very
but
short
yeah,
notice.
in the future.
Um, cool, cool. I will be there. This will be my second RubyConf or whatever. I've been to like 10-ish Rails comps, but It's my second RubyConf. I I'll
Nice.
I'll I will happily volunteer to be a guide. Actually, I have never signed up, but I will. We can chat about that offline. But yeah, um,
Awesome. This
cool.
is great.
Yeah, yeah. So I'll bump your number up by one.
Awesome. Well,
Oh,
thank
okay.
you.
Over the years, I have totally sent. I have totally encouraged lots of people over the years to apply for the scholarship program. So,
Oh, well,
um,
great. Thank you.
I've totally increased the workload on other people. I should probably give it back, right? Um,
No, that's great. No, we really appreciate it. And it's, that's fun stuff. You get to sit and like we reserve always the first few rows. We have the opening reception the day before, which is fun, where we all get together and we have
mm,
drinks and, food and all hang out. So it's really cool to build that kind of extra community there and just feel like you're making a difference. And yeah, so we definitely really appreciate
maybe
anyone who volunteers to do that.
maybe that's what we should do is have like advertise the tiny perks, right? And just be like, hey, you get these tiny perks. Just come join.
Well, we would love to create more perks, but we want to take
As
the
a limit, yeah.
sponsorship money that we get to help scholars be able to afford to travel to the conference because, we don't want, money and finances to be a barrier. So we've, made the conscious decision to not, I wish I could be like, oh, you get all this cool free stuff or whatever, but
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. I meant, just advertise the front row thing and like
I know
all the
it's pretty
things that
cool.
like as I think back, I'm like, oh yeah, I knew that, but I don't think about that. And I mean, yeah,
You get the special signature on your badge, right?
yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
we've done that in past years. Yeah.
and so for people that like maybe are a little bit less inclined to be social, right? Like it's totally a free like excuse for you to get to meet like get the inroads on like meeting some people.
Yes, definitely. And a lot of the scholars, they're like, oh, we want to meet, Max or we want to meet DHH. So you have to go up to them and be like, hey, this is my scholar. So, but it's also a
Oh, is
good
that how it
in
works?
that way too. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely been some requests at past conferences and things like that. But
I
yeah,
mean,
just, oh,
yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say the guides seem to work together too. So like, even if you don't know these other people, oftentimes you can find a guide that does that can help like bridge that connection. So
Yeah.
it's super fun. I would totally do it again.
And I feel like as a guide, and Valentino can speak to this more, but you can also expand your network by meeting other guides and, scholars too. I've had scholars that have been part of the program who, working right next to now and different things like that. So
Yeah.
it's really cool. And we have a lot of the scholars come back as guides, which is amazing. And, we have scholars who work at big time tech companies now and things like that. So it's just really cool to kind of see it come full circle and you know that it does open a lot of doors for people. It's really that's pretty rewarding.
Yeah, for
Sweet.
sure.
To maybe I so while we were talking, I was like, you know what? I should go see if the guide thing is still up there. It is totally up there still on the RubyConf website. So anyone that's listening, I just clicked on scholarships and there's a blue apply today button for guides. So and there's a thing to apply.
Yeah, and we also have this new thing that they're doing on the website where it shows all the scholars and guides, which is cool too. So if you scroll down to the bottom of that page.
Oh yeah. Cool. All right. Well, thanks for that.
Thank you, helping me get more guides in the program. And yeah, we don't want to double up on scholars. So if you're on the
Yeah.
edge, please consider doing so. It's such a big part, and we want to make sure that the Ruby community is what, one thing I really like about it is really welcoming to beginners and, we want it to be not a super intimidating place that I know kind of other communities can be in the tech world. So, let's keep giving back to this so that we can ensure that we keep that going.
Yeah, I think that mentoring, I mean, shoot, I not to spend too long in the soapbox, but like I think mentoring is rewarding for the mentors too, right? So if you're on the
Mhm.
edge or whatever, like I mean, I have pretty good relationships with the people that I've mentored over the years, and it's been rewarding to me because, now they're peers, right? So, like for
Yeah.
example, like I still talk to Andrew Mason like on a weekly basis, and like I like when he first started, came out of college and like I like was the mentor right at his job, and like we just chat on a weekly basis, and it's a great peer-to-peer relationship now, right? So like that stuff can reward you as well
Totally. I definitely hope we'll be hitting up my past mentees for jobs, I'm sure at some point.
at some point after we're all laid off because of. I'm just kidding. Um,
AI.
I feel like we're gonna be the last ones laid off for AI, but maybe not. Maybe not. Sweet.
Kinsey, I not to immediately change subjects, but your deployments at GitHub that strikes a huge curiosity, vent in my soul.
Yeah,
I think
totally.
the last time I knew anything about GitHub's deployment process, I saw a Ruby Kaigi talk from Rob Sanheim. I don't even know if he works there anymore.
Oh, no, the
But
name
like
is not familiar. I'm gonna have to watch this. This is
it's
an older.
2000, yeah, 2014.
Okay.
He had like CD, continuous delivery talk on how GitHub uses chat ops basically to deploy. And I mean, I've used chat ops for quite a long time to deploy as well, which is kind of funny. I'm curious, how does it work now? Like,
Yeah, so it is still all chat up space. It's crazy. So I type in Slack, dot deploy my pull request in the environment I want to deploy to. And that was so new to me. I was like, wait, I typed this in I remember it was like my first day and I was scared to ask someone. I couldn't figure out how to, I was so shocked. I don't know why. But I worked at DigitalOcean previously, and we definitely didn't deploy using a Slack command. So for me, yeah, it was a really big learning curve. I mean, once you get the hang of it, it's amazing. But yeah, so we definitely still do everything, a lot of things using chat apps, and that is one of the things that my team is responsible for. So that's in a Rails app. We have a big Rails monolith that we call Heaven that kind of houses all of that and the chat apps and the different things that you're doing there. So work pretty frequently in that. But it's also funny just to refer to it as Heaven because I'll be talking with colleagues or I was talking with, Justin Searles, who knows that code base too. And his wife was around and we kept referring to Heaven, like, oh, we should pair in Heaven sometimes. And it was, she was like, what? So,
oh,
yeah.
that's really funny. It's in the clouds, right?
Yeah. But yeah, so still very much like Slack, chat op space, which is great, and a lot of things that we do. So yeah, and I haven't seen that at too many other companies, but it sounds like at your company, that's the way it is too.
Yeah, we actually use Heaven as well. I don't know if it was a fork of what GitHub used to have or what, but
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
it's
I
really
had no
funny.
idea. So you get the weirdness when you're like, oh, Heaven.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think we use Hubot, which is also similar
That's
from
the one that I.
something from GitHub.
Yes, we use Hubot. Yep.
Yeah, so I think
That
there
was
was
one of the
a
early ones.
yeah. We've now moved to a new Ruby based version of Hubot. I don't know if we have a standard for that or not, but that's super cool. So I'm curious. You say you're coming from something other than Ruby, and now you're back in Ruby. Uh,
Yeah.
what is that story like? Like where were you coming from, and kind of how have you been at readjusting back to Ruby?
Yeah. So I did at DigitalOcean, I did a little bit of Ruby, but I was doing a lot of work in Golang, which I hadn't seen or, worked in really. And that was awesome. It's very different from Ruby. And I remember like Googling, like, what's a signed integer versus an unsigned integer? And how do I know which one I want to use? I'm like, wow, maybe a computer science degree would help me right now. But, you have Google. So, um, yeah, we do have a couple services that our team owns to like a mode deploy operator and things like that are in Go. But I haven't worked on that specifically on my team. I've mostly been in Heaven in the Rails monolith, so back in Rails land, and it's been really nice. And I like Go. The one thing that I was really hard for me to get used to coming from something like Ruby were readability things. And in Go, it's very common that when you have a variable, you name it just like the first letter of that, like E for error, or I guess ERR for error. But a lot of, the way of doing things in Go is very much shorthand and not very clear variable names, in my opinion. And I'm used to Ruby where I would have like really long variable names that say exactly what the method is doing, or so I think that was a learning curve for me as well. And just, I don't know, if I felt like it wasn't, I didn't feel pretty ready. I don't know, sometimes when I write Ruby, I'm just like, wow, that feels so nice and like pretty. And I don't think I ever felt like that in Go, but I know it's really powerful and I really do like using it. But I don't know if either of you have worked in Go, or how you feel about it versus Ruby, and it's, depends on
Small
what job you need it for.
small pieces. We have pieces at Doximity that are built in Go, our authentication system, and I had to do like a a split test on a sign in page that moved to that, and I it was interesting. I There were some things I really like about Go, namely the auto formatting of code that just like kind
Yeah.
of magically happens. Uh, but I mean, I feel like also maybe similarly to Ruby, the like environment setup is kind of wonky, where it has to be in a very specific directory. Not that Ruby has to be in a specific directory, but like the setup to get like Ruby on a system like working right if you have like multiple versions and stuff. Like similar to Go, it's kind of hard to do. It's not
Yeah.
like super straightforward. We have a bunch of tools now that help make it a little easier, like CH Ruby or something like that. But like, I
Yeah.
feel like even still, the similar pain points that I could share amongst Go and Ruby.
No wonder you think it's so hard since you're using CHRuby.
Hey, I use CH Ruby
Sorry.
too, so.
I'm just I'm like I didn't know this, and I'm like, wow, I actually now know two people that use it besides the one person that wrote the article, like, I don't know, like 12 or something years ago, back when, like, I think RVM like was kind of like making like headway or whatever. Like, then we use CHRuby on like our servers, and I was like, oh, here's this other thing, and then RBM came out, and I like never looked back. But but yeah, I didn't know. I have never met anyone that actually used it, so, but I don't go around asking people either.
Yeah, I use it now. Penelope Fippen, I don't know if any of you know her, but she was my
Yep.
manager and, has been my mentor throughout my career. And we were at DigitalOcean together, and she, told me and showed me the way of CH Ruby. And I thought it was Cha Ruby, so I'm glad to know now that I've been CH Ruby. But yeah, ever since working with her, I've used it ever since. So
I used to call RBM RBEM, so it's all good. You don't know
I,
until you know.
yeah, and I'm like, is it care or char? I've heard multiple
I
people
mean,
call it different things too. So,
yeah, that one I feel like is a lot more split, right?
right. Yeah. But
Uh,
you want to sound like you know what you're talking about. So that's,
yeah, I definitely I have read things many times in my life before ever hearing them verbally, and so
yeah.
then I will get, this idea of what I think it is, and I have totally, on so many occasions, been the butt of the joke when somebody's like, "Why did you pronounce it like that?" or whatever, right? And so like I try not to be very judgy about that, but I do find it a great, interesting point of humor as well, right? Just how that works. Because if you don't know, you don't know.
Yeah. And circling back, to the mentorship thing, I do think that's a big thing that I help my mentees or my students out with, or what you can as a guide too. It's like, oh, most people pronounce it different ways or whatever, but yeah, most people pronounce it like this. I think really, um, I feel like I do that a lot with my students and mentees too, which can be, I think, a good thing. So especially when you're going into interviews, like if you I think it's important, and you don't want people to be like,
Mhm.
oh, they don't know what they're talking about. But agreed, like a lot of it
Yeah,
is written. So
Yeah,
I
I, I
good,
I
good.
typically
No,
have
it's
the
fine.
reverse effect where I'll go in like having said it in my head for so long. that I'll just like continuously say it like how differently from how everybody else says it. And then like after the fact I'll find out like, oh, like most people pronounce it this other way, but like it just never changes because like it continues to be written like in my, day to day after that. So it's not like, I don't have enough like face to face maybe interactions with people talking about the specific like weird naming of tooling, right? Like so it's kind of funny like to listen to talks from conferences, right? And like have people slip with like, how they pronounce this tooling and it's like, wait, did they say it the right way? Like
That's how I felt
you
with
know?
the CH Ruby. True. I keep wanting to call it Ruby. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I mean,
totally.
to be honest, continue saying it Cherubi. Like, I
There
may change as well.
there does need to be a small subset of the population that calls it that. Otherwise, we'll forget that.
Right.
Yeah, and I also feel like though it's important. Well, I think, junior, it depends on where you are in your career. If you're like a senior developer, like no one's going to question you even if you say it wrong. But if you're a junior, it's like totally different. They're like, "Oh, you don't know what you're doing." So I feel like it's important to depending on where you are in your career, unfortunately, because it shouldn't matter, but
Nope, that is true. I also agree that it shouldn't matter, but we live in a world where it does. And I mean, I would love to say that, if somebody's judging you in an interview because you pronounced it wrong, you didn't want to work there anyway. And I do
yeah,
pretty
that's
much
true.
like I take that stance, but at the same time, like I mean, I've also been at a place where I was like, I need this job because I need to feed my family, and
Yeah.
you know, I don't want to be judged for things, right? Like I need to land the job so I can feed my family, and I'll worry about whether it's a good one or not later. Um, yeah.
Yeah, no, I am, same page or totally on the same page with you on that. And it's just hard, especially in this economic time with, companies doing all these layoffs and all of that. And I have a huge issue with companies that do computer science interviews. And you would be surprised how many companies still really focus on that and rely on that very heavily. And it drives me nuts. And then they try to tell me that they're trying to like widen their pipeline and make their workforce more diverse. And I'm like, do you want to look at the statistics of people graduating from a computer science program versus like boot camp and people who don't have a traditional background? But yeah, so that's definitely something that I it's so hard, especially given the economic times we're in right now.
It's messy in my opinion, and I think there's a lot of I mean, at the end of the day, the only thing that I like get mad about is when somebody says, "Well, we're looking for this kind of people," and then I'm like, "But what you're doing in your interviews is literally filtering them out." Like,
Yeah.
so if they're like, "Oh, we're looking for this kind of people," and what they're doing in their interviews kind of sort of lines up with that, then like, okay, well, that's what they're looking for, and you can judge them on who they're looking for then, I guess, or whatever. But
That's true.
um, uh, yeah,
It's kind of
sweet.
funny to me in software that there is any of that like requirement of like the academia track, right? Like it seems like more of a you know uh, what do you call it, gig job, not gig job, but like technical job, right? Uh, like a mechanic or something like that, where you have an apprenticeship program potentially,
Mm,
uh, versus like I feel like to me like something that requires like a huge institutional like push and like a degree for example are should be more like uh, jobs where you kind of need I don't know if you want to call it like research related work, right? Like it, most people don't like graduate with a degree and then be like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna apply like all of these detailed things from my degree to what I'm working on in software. Right? They're like, oh, like, well, I, read a ton, like I've worked with a ton of psychology majors in software. I don't know if it's just me or it happens to be a like thing, right? But like, I can't imagine like in software you're using a lot of like crazy psychological concepts all the time, right? Like, how much does that play into like your application of the job, versus like a boot camp where you're like specifically training and like honing in all the specific skills that you're trying to learn, or I don't know, any number of other alternatives. I feel like it's just
Yeah, no,
it's almost like
totally.
it's wasted education, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
In a
Yeah, and you
lot
have to
in a
have
lot of
you have to have the
respects.
means to be able to pay out colleges, so to
Yeah,
get that
exactly.
degree and all of that. And I would just love to see a cultural shift in the industry to move away from that. But and I got my degree in advertising, and I'm working alongside people who all have computer science degrees and things like that. But I don't. That's definitely not anything you would ever notice. Like, we're all equal and don't
Right.
see any differences there, except maybe I had to Google what a signed versus unsigned individual was, but that's it.
So speak.
I good.
I was gonna transition because I mean, speaking of Go, again, like I was curious, you know, what that between Go and Ruby, like Ruby's better, right?
I would say so. And Ruby's always going to have my heart. And I just, the Ruby community is just amazing. And it is just super awesome to be a part of. So I can't imagine
Uh,
not ever being a part of it.
I know we just had Halloween, but is that you under there, Luke? I feel like that's totally a Luke question.
He's rubbing off on me.
Is that what it is? Uh, yeah, I personally haven't done any Go outside of like toy apps, right? Like which don't really count for much other than hey, I vaguely know how to do the syntax, and because I do a lot of Docker stuff, right? Like I'm used to at least interpolating and stuff in Go. But other outside of that, right? Like uh, not too much. I've done other things, but not Go. I spent the last few months doing Flutter, so
I've never even heard
that's
of
that's its
Flutter.
own thing. So it's okay. So the really quick version is it's like for making apps like for your phone or whatever, right? But it's kind of like the React Native idea. You write one thing, and you're gonna get an iOS app, Android app, web version or whatever.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
and the big distinction about it, so people that have used Flex in the past or whatever might recognize like the whole like, hey, there's a bunch of XML, right, which is defining everything that's going on, and all of my XML objects are given to me by the Flutter ecosystem or whatever, and that's how I build everything. Uh, it's kind of like writing HTML. It's kind of like writing React, except that React, like you spend a lot more time in React, sort of, uh, in the JavaScript class or whatever, writing stuff, than you do in Flutter, where in Flutter you're just gonna nest like 10,000 widgets, Uh, so in it's definitely different. It has a different flavor to it.
Hmm.
There's a lot more in when you're doing React or something like that. Like so, I'm thinking React Native here in my brain. When you're doing that, you're going to be writing a lot more custom widgets. Whereas in Flutter, you're going to need to go look up all the widgets you're supposed to use. Probably. I mean, you're going to write some custom ones, but you're going to spend a lot of time looking stuff up and just using their stuff. Um, it does suck to transport your CSS over to Flutter because you're gonna, instead of using CSS, you're gonna use like special widgets that help you to lay out your stuff. And it's definitely different.
Interesting.
Um, my
And this
particular
was in
goal
your
for
first.
moving.
Oh, sorry.
Go
I
ahead.
was just going to ask if this was what you're doing for work or what you're doing for fun in your free time.
No, this is my client project. This is
Ah,
my big
cool.
client
Okay.
project on my plate. So yeah, yeah.
Sorry, I interrupted. Keep going. Yeah, I've never heard of those, so this is
No,
super
no.
interesting.
We actually are moving them there because we've had such a bad time with the React Native project that we have, mostly during like upgrade times and just not lack of support for things that you would use like notifications because everyone has push notifications on their phones, right? But like there's definitely like a lot of common use cases that React Native over the years has just decided that they don't care about it because I mean all the devs are from sorry, I'm beating up on React Native over here. All the devs are from Facebook, so if Facebook doesn't care
Uh,
about it, they just kind of like just drop it and don't care. It seems that's my opinion on it. Not necessarily the Ruby rogues, blah blah blah, all that legal stuff. So yeah, It's just and that's caught us in our project off guard multiple times. And sometimes it's like, oh, I have to wait 2 days to get a workaround for something, right? And then it's like months before we can actually truly fix it. And that's just a very frustrating thing. And so we thought we'd try something else. And there's a healthy Flutter community here in Charlotte that one of my mentees like started up, and
Oh,
I just
cool.
kind of like became familiar with it, and I was like, all right, and I did enough into it and thought I would try it, and so far it's okay. So anyway, yeah. So you do other things, and I'm very happy to go
Widgets.
back
That's what I
to
got from it.
Ruby.
TLDR widgets.
Yes, yes, it's
Widgets.
different. I mean,
No, that's cool. I haven't heard
I
of it
think
before.
it's very true of a lot of things in computer science that like it's abstract enough that you're sitting here having this conversation with very technical, knowledgeable people, and you're like floundering around for common language that will help you express these concepts to them because, truth be told, they also are just barely communicating the concepts that they're trying to communicate to you, and you just aren't really realizing that, right? And we're
Yeah.
all like playing this game of trying to communicate very difficult things to each other. So,
That's why I
yes.
think we need variable names that are not one letter long. So, but yeah.
I also like Rubocop standards.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Yeah, that's a thing on our team right now, like how we want to maintain or enforce styles and things like that. But GitHub obviously has its own like our own Ruby architecture group that kind of decides that our Ruby style guide. So, which I'm sure a lot of companies do.
How did you get into the DevOps side of things? Did you start out your career over there? Did you just kind of like land a job in it? Like,
Yeah, I would
how did
definitely
that
say the
happen?
latter. So, as I mentioned, Penelope, who's been a big mentor for me, was working at DigitalOcean, and I was at a kind of small startup or medium sized. I don't know. It's hard. I don't know what's a small startup versus a large startup here in Denver, and doing very much full stack, wearing all the hats type work. And Penelope was working there and said, "Hey, you should interview here." And I went for it, and I called it my reach school because I was like, "Oh, there's no way I'm going to get a job here." And I feel like I kind of bobbed the interview. It was really intimidating. Things like, I mean, they were great. It was a great interview process, but still, it's scary. And a lot of the stuff was very heavy back end stuff that I wasn't 100% used to. And so from there, I got the job. I was super excited and really kind of jumped into very much back end DevOps type work there. And then, same thing with what I'm doing at GitHub. And I love being in that space. And I definitely foresee that my career is just going to continue down that road. And, when I first started writing code, if you were to tell me that, I would be like, "You're crazy. There's no way I'm going to like that stuff." um, but yeah, I wouldn't say I'm like a Kubernetes or Docker expert, and it's something that we're lucky at GitHub. We get like a monthly day of learning and a learning and development budget, and I'm definitely wanting to focus on that and get more in the weeds with all of that because I think it's really important, and that's where I see my career going from or continuing on in, I guess. So yeah, I'm really excited to be on that path and be in more of the DevOps side of things. It's a fun place to be in. The problems are really cool. And I also feel like it's job security, because pretty soon, the robots are going to write the code for us. Just kidding. But yeah, so I really like the work. And I also see a lot of potential for, breaking glass ceiling there and things like that. There tends to be a lot less diversity in these types of roles and things like that too. So that's also important to me.
Just kind of curious for my own personal reasons. Like, how long have you been in GitHub? I was just kind of curious, like, whether you've been there for forever, like a couple
I
years,
It
one
will be
year
two
kind of thing.
months next month. 2 months next month, which is
Oh,
I'm sorry,
all
two
right. Well,
years.
happy.
Wow, I
Yeah.
can't 2 years. But
Okay.
yeah, so 2 years. So I've been there a while, and
Okay. Yeah.
I've been a part of multiple reorgs. So originally, well, I was on doing very different things. I was actually working on like Azure pipelines and different things like that, and that was not super exciting to me. So I actually went on parental leave, and GitHub's really great. I got over 6 months paid time off, which is amazing and kind of unheard of. And so yeah, hopefully, we can keep normalizing that. But again, you have to be a big enough company to be able to support having employees that take off for that long. But yeah,
Yeah.
so when I came back from that, I felt like I was starting a new job just because it had been so long. But I was on a totally new team, on the deploys team, and doing, work in heaven and things like that. So done a few different things while I've been there in the last 2 years. So yeah, and took a little break to do the mom thing full time. So yeah,
Congratulations.
Nice.
thanks. Yeah, it's a lot, and sounds like at least John has kids. Um, I'm not
I
sure
would
Yeah,
about
I
echo
do
that.
Alex.
as well. It's
So you,
it's tough. It's tough adjusting.
yeah, yeah, it is, and working
Yes.
and doing all that, and mom guilt, and not staying home and being a full time mom, and but that's definitely something that wasn't for me. But kudos to those who it is for. So, um, but yeah, I'm lucky I get to make it work. And my mom actually watches my son during the day while I work from home. So another reason that I think remote is so important is, I get to be home with my son, even though he's not with me all the time. I still get to see him a lot more, and it just makes everything so much easier. So I can't imagine being a working parent and having to commute to the office. So, and not being around him. But
My wife and I were joking the other day that we couldn't remember what it was like to having both kids in a car seat, and how great it is not to have that as a thing in your life. And it's funny, we talk about like how things are named and how to say specific tooling and stuff, and how obvious it becomes that that stuff doesn't really matter when you have kids.
yeah, so it sounds
Yeah.
like both of you have older kids who aren't.
Uh, ish. I have a 6-year-old and a she's working on she's like at 20 months, so almost two.
Well, do either of you have advice for me on?
Yeah. Yeah, I have tons of advice. Lots of people are gonna give you advice, and you just ignore most of it. Like, well, not ignore it, but like, just take whatever you want from it, right? Like, I don't know. Everyone is always pouring their advice on us, and we just like had to learn how to create our own filters,
Yeah,
because
no,
just
that's
so
great.
much
I
is
think
coming
that's
in.
good advice. Yeah,
It's
totally.
easy to retroactively, say what you should and should not have done
Yeah.
to these beautiful creatures that are so very specific and individual. So one answer doesn't fit all.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
If only.
We have so much more in like the mental health resources and things like that. So I feel like like for example, like my wife has a lot more support than I feel like, people would have had a long time ago, and things
Yeah,
for her dealings with like mom guilt and things like that, right? So,
yeah.
yeah, I don't know. We just put Melanie, our youngest, our daughter, in like preschool for like just a couple of days a week because we were like, huh, that really worked for Cameron. It helped him to socialize and get, some stuff. And we were like, well, we want this for Melanie too. And then my wife is like, I'm feeling mom guilt because I'm not taking care of her every day. And like, so, I mean, I don't know, just do what works for you. And like your kid's alive, very good. Your kid seems to be growing. I think those are the important things. Like,
Yeah, that's true. No, that's
so
good. That's
yeah,
good advice, even though you weren't giving me advice. You technically, both of you were, so it's good though. And yeah, that everything works, everything's different for each family. So
yeah, that's true. That was actually a really big lesson for us, right? Is that like we needed to stop looking at everyone else's kids and being like, oh, something's wrong with my kid, So it's fine. They all just take a different path.
yeah, nope, that's good because yeah, crew isn't quite walking yet, and I'm like, oh, he's like late on walk. It's stressful because all the other kids his age that I see are walking, and it's just so hard not to compare. So yeah, that's a good thing to keep in mind.
It's kind of funny, like as software people, you try and like apply what we know in our industry to like parenting. At least I do. I don't know if you do find this as well, but you try and find optimizing little things of your day or something like that. Or maybe you notice like, your kid is a little bit late during this time of day, so you try and like, get ahead of them and like planned out the rest of the day for them, or some small things like this, like premature optimization. I started thinking of it. And I'm like, maybe I should just stop that. And I'm like, maybe I should stop applying my computer science stuff or software stuff to my life as a parent, right? Like maybe it doesn't apply, right?
It's
That's
hard because
awesome.
then you get too nihilistic, right? And then you're like, maybe I should do nothing. And you're like, oh no, that's not obviously not the right answer either. So then you're just like, oh, this is I don't know. I feel like it's really hard because uh in software, we often are like, okay, this is the solution we've got, and we're going with it, right? And you ship it, and you're stuck with it until you rewrite it like 2 years later or something, right? But like
Yeah.
with kids, you're like literally rewriting it every week, because okay, well, okay, so my kid is having trouble uh, actually remembering to go to the bathroom. He's 6. Most kids his age are. But at the same time, we're also like pretty sure he has ADHD, so he's probably gonna keep having this problem. But we don't want to like stop, trying to like teach him. But at the same time, we also don't want to like beat him up about it or like, give him like self-confidence issues. So like just I don't know.
Yeah,
It's
it's hard
just
to find
you're
the
hard.
balance.
It's hard. You like yeah, you do things one week and you're like, ah, maybe that wasn't so good. And you do it, and you're just trying to figure it out. And um, to be honest, the only way that I don't know, I just sit back and I'm like, all right, well, I'm struggling, so that's probably a sign that we're okay. So,
Yeah, and one thing that, learning to code and coding has really taught me was just to be really comfortable with failure. And I feel like that was good preparation for me becoming a parent because you fail a lot. So,
yeah, yeah. So I totally, yeah, 100%. I call it throwing things out, right? You have to learn how to throw things out and be okay with throwing out the thing that you just wrote, right? And
yeah, and
I can,
trying something new, like trying a new approach, whether it be like approaching a problem or trying something like that or with your kid. So, yeah, sometimes a lot of similarities.
Does Ruby Central still offer the daycare during conferences?
No, I don't think that many people were
No.
utilizing it, but yeah, I don't think that's a thing
is that
anymore.
what
I know it
happened?
used to be. I don't know. We should
I it,
follow up with them on it.
it was a
Well,
thing before I had kids, so I'm curious if I could take
Same.
advantage now or not.
well, I saw that they removed it from the RubyConf website, and so when you brought that up, I thought, oh, well, maybe, or what I thought it was that you had to sign up early enough so that they could plan for it, but maybe it's canceled. I don't know. Yeah.
I'll have to ask because yeah, I think that's a good question and a good point. And I know people in the past who they wouldn't be able to attend the conference if they didn't have that. So, but I do know that not very many people utilized it. So
All right. Well, let's go ahead and move into picks then. Unless there's anything
awesome.
else that we want to like, did you have anything you wanted to end with or Valentino before we
I'm
move on?
sad we missed out on all of your great DI&B work with your employee resource group at GitHub. I would love to have dived in more there. We'll have to have you back on to like really dig in because it sounds like some great work. I mean, I know at Duxton we were trying to like, you know, like hugely change like, our diversity and inclusion efforts. And I'm curious like
That's
what
cool to hear.
how you guys are trying to adopt that, your strategies as well, because it is like just such a hard, problem to solve and to get, everybody on board for.
Totally. Well, yes, would definitely
There
be
were
up for that. And yeah,
there were
sorry.
definitely a lot of topics that we just kind of like brushed by on. Oh, no need to apologize. There were definitely a lot of topics that we just brushed by, and yeah, love to have you back. Let's go ahead and kick off into picks, and I guess since you have a hard stop, if you're comfortable with it, if you would like to go first or second or however you would like to handle it.
Sure, I can go. So I have two picks today, obviously just around different things that we've talked about and different things I'm involved in. So I feel like we already did a lot of the plug for the scholarship programs and things like that, but have a URL for you to visit the for the scholarship programs in general at Ruby Central. So please, please, please volunteer to be a guide. And if you know people who would be a good fit for a scholar, please let them know. We definitely want to keep that program going and growing. And then my second pick is Bridge Foundry, bridgefoundry.org. We are, kind of restarting that, wanting to make that a thing. And again, that's how I learned or got into writing code. So it's very important organization to me. And I know some people who are listening have probably volunteered at a RailsBridge at some point in their career. So we're going to start getting all of those back up and running again. So please be on the lookout for that. And if you are interested in getting more involved, please reach out to me. We would love to have you. So those are my picks.
Sweet. Valentino, you got a couple picks for us, or one, or however many,
Sure. Yeah.
and a dog. Okay.
And a dog. Yeah. Sorry, that was my dog Jupiter. Uh, so I have a couple picks here. The first pick I have is a couple of my coworkers rebooted a Rails meetup in Mexico City, where they're at, and it's kind of exciting. They wrote this great article on kind of what their experience was getting that started, and you know kind of how that went. And if you're interested in starting up your own, I definitely recommend checking it out and starting your own group up because you know we're all back together again. uh, and the next one I
Nice.
have, it's this really odd uh, device that some research group has made, where it's a smartwatch that's organic. It relies on a special kind of slime mold to produce the electricity, and you have to feed it. And the research group actually had participants in a study to try it out and give their feedback, and just the feedback is kind of just like so wild to read how they grew a connection for the living organism that was supplying the electricity for their watch. It's really interesting, so I recommend checking that out if you want a kind of bizarre laugh.
Dude, I, I'm where's the Kickstarter? Like, it's like, yeah. Oh, all right. Is that it for us then? From you, Valentino? Cool. All right. So I have a couple picks. So my first one is actually sort of a more generic one. So I have been working from home for quite a while, like, before COVID and things like this. And um, before COVID, I would go to lots of meetups and, like, uh, you know, give myself time to interact with people like through various ways like that. But unfortunately, COVID kind of like took that away. And I've been talking to my partner about actually going to rent out some office space so that I can go there like a few times a week. So I'm going to be hybrid in one of those rented office spaces. So rented office spaces, I think, is the new thing. So just putting that out there for all of you that don't want to be remote anymore, which I know is a very small portion of us. Um, and then my second thing, I'm actually going to go ahead and, I mean, actually recommend Flutter. I've been having a pretty good time with it. It's definitely a learning curve, and I definitely was beating my head against the wall and it's kind of mad multiple times, many times actually, while I was getting this project off the ground. But at the end of the day, like so far, I mean, uh, Flutter feels different than Rails did, like at the Rails 1 kind of era, right, when it was growing super fast. But there are some things in it that I feel like are the good parts of that era, right? Like the excitement and people like continually contributing and like trying to handle backwards compatibility problems and things like that. Like I see a lot of the good signs of like a thing that's growing in a healthy manner. So I feel pretty good about it so far, and I've upgraded my app like 4 or 5 times now without too much issue, and so that's felt pretty good. So I feel pretty good about it so far. We'll see how I feel in a couple of years, but um, so far so good. So those are the picks I got. So yeah, I guess we'll go ahead and wrap this up. Thanks for coming, Kinsey.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it and enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, this was great. We'll definitely have to have you on again.
Yeah, we can dive in
Yes,
on some of those meatier topics. So thanks so much, and I will talk to you both soon.
absolutely. Take
Take
care.
care.
Have fun at your meeting.
Bye.